Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your patience. We've been all looking forward to this last presentation, and thank you very much as well, those of you who are watching us online. Our speaker's main mission is to make non-biodegradable plastic biodegradable. This in itself is super interesting, so without any further ado, let me introduce the business development lead of Polyloop, Márton Iványi.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for your warm welcome. In the upcoming minutes, I will be talking about a huge problem that we have globally. That huge problem is plastics, and I will also show you how this problem can actually become a potential, hopefully. That's what you're going to come away with. So yes, our mission is to turn plastics into nature. Why we have to do that? Let's just quickly go through really what this plastic problem is. Beginning of the last century, that's when plastics were first invented and slowly gained commercial applications. Very interesting fact, Rolls-Royce in 1916 made it a point to claim that they are using plastics in their car interiors. Back then, all the rage was not using wood and leather in the car interior, but the top car manufacturer actually advertised that they are using plastics in their cars. Of course, back then, plastics at first were very expensive, and as new methods for producing plastic polymers became available, they got cheaper and cheaper and started to be used on a commercial scale in a wide variety of products. One of the first ones that was really used on a large scale was bakelite. Of course, you might know it from very old telephones. Scotch tape, for example, the first sticky tape with plastic was only invented in 1930. But then in the 1930s, the development related to plastic all started to speed up, and more and more applications came forward. Of course, the pre-war and the war period gave a huge boost to plastics. All different kinds of plastics were introduced and started to be used on a bigger and bigger scale. Now, from the 40s, from the 50s, that's when we can really talk about plastics becoming a staple of everyday life. And ever since that, the amount of plastic used and the plastic waste that is generated by us globally has been basically exponentially growing. Right now, annually, we produce roughly 300 million tons of plastics globally. Just in the European Union, we produce about 51 million tons and use 51 million tons annually. Here you can see the main users of plastics. The packaging industry is huge, it's about 40%. Then there's the building and construction industry, again, a 20% user of all the plastic in the European Union, and then all the other industries. Basically, there aren't many industries that do not use plastics to some extent right now. Okay, so are plastics a friend or a foe? Well, plastics helped us to improve our living standards. There are many, many products that couldn't really get to you right now if it wasn't for plastics, because we are using it in packaging to keep the product intact, to keep the product safe. And here you can think about foodstuffs that would be very, very hard to produce or transport without the use of plastics. But it's also a foe, because we have a huge problem with how we treat the plastics that were once used. Each year, we generate more plastic than the weight of the whole human race. the numbers are staggering. And out of this roughly 300 million tons that I mentioned before, about 270 million tons are mismanaged. By that, I mean it's not recycled in any way. Effectively, we only recycle about 2.5% of the plastic produced. The rest of it is downcycled, which means that from a high-value plastic, like a wrapper that enables you to buy some food and keep it fresh until you get home, it becomes a filling material or some kind of lower value plastic. So most of plastic recycling is downcycling, and we are only managing to recycle about 10% of plastic waste right now. There's another quarter that's about incinerated, and the rest of it either goes into landfill or goes completely untreated. That's the plastic that ends up in oceans, in rivers, that's really, really poisoning our environment. But there is this huge, huge pie that we need to do something about in order for basically humanity to survive. Otherwise, we are going to drown in plastic. Now, what happens right now? There are 7 official plastic strain or monomer classifications, but they are not really recycle classifications. You might know these 7 marks from 1 to 7 from different products that you buy, and actually only 1 and 2 are the ones that we can currently effectively recycle. It's basically PAT mostly that we effectively recycle. All the rest, it ends up in incineration, it ends up in landfills. So we either burn it or we dig a hole in the ground and put it in there. That's basically our solution globally for 90% of plastic waste that we currently have. Now, how this goes is there's a collecting phase where we collect the plastic. There's a sorting phase. Unfortunately, sorting is very important for the current technologies that are in place for plastic recycling. Then there is shredding, so basically the sorted plastic, one type of plastic gets shredded down to smaller elements. Then there's a washing element, because whenever we're talking about true recycling here, it's very important that the plastic waste needs to be clean. If you think about it, definitely your home plastic waste is not really clean when you put it in the bin. But plastic waste, in order for it to be recycled, it needs to be clean. So there's a washing phase, then there's a second sorting phase and control phase, and then some of it can really go into recycling. This might shed a light why only 2.5% is carried via true recycling. It's not easy to recycle plastic at all. Currently, if you're looking at recycled plastic, if you remember the figure from earlier, I showed you that about 51 million tons of plastic is used and produced in Europe, and we are only recycling around 4 million tons. Most of that recycled plastic is actually used in the building and construction industry, because in a lot of places they can use lower quality plastic, so they don't have to actually go for the true recycling for this to work. There are some other industries that are big users, but the disparity between the 4 million and the 51 million that is produced annually, I think, is quite evident. Yeah, so plastic recycling is complicated, and yes, we have high aims to recycle most of our plastics, but currently, what we know about plastic recycling, there are limits to it, which type of monomers we can recycle, and just how much of it we can recycle and how much of it we can reuse. For example, most true recycled plastic can only be used about 3 times, because there's a degradation going on in the monomer, and you cannot do a forever cycle of PET bottles of plastic because it just doesn't work that way. Now, what can we do about this? We can, of course, reduce our reliance on plastics, which can be done to some extent, but there are absolutely limits to it. There are about 3 billion people in the world who are just getting to a development stage where they are becoming big users of plastics. So really reducing plastic consumption on a global level, it's not really something that we'll be able to achieve soon. Then, of course, we can recycle plastic, and all the power to all the recycling technologies that enable us to recycle more type of monomers and just recycle more in any sense anyway. But reuse is also a very important factor here. And then comes our technology at Polyloop, where we actually have an alternative. Basically, what you can see here is a cycle of how Polyloop's technology works. There is that plastic container that the grape comes in that you buy at the store. With our technology, a little bit of grinding and our bacteria cocktail, you can disintegrate the polymers in that plastic container, and basically the end result is biomass. It's a sludge that can be used as a soil improver and actually can be an input for agriculture for soil improvement. So basically, instead of a recycling, we're doing a true recycling through a biological process where we arrive at an output from a plastic input that is actually useful for the environment. Here you can see an example of what happens to a PET bottle with our technology. So this PET bottle was cut up but not even grinded to small pieces. And as you can see, in 49 days, it turned into bacteria, sand, and water, because that's the end sludge. That's the output of our process. And we very strongly feel that we can absolutely be a player in reducing the amount of plastic waste that just goes into landfill with this technology. Basically, what Polyloop does, what Polyloop's technology does, is enables us to recycle, or rather reuse, those plastic types that cannot be truly recycled right now. Instead of going into landfill, it can become compost, it can become biomass, it can become a useful and clean substance. And clean is very, very important. We have tested our output for over 200 hazardous potential elements, and our test results are really good. We are able to actually generate a clean output from most types of plastics. Of course, there are some additives that we have to deal with, but our end result is something that you can actually grow plants in our tests so far. So this is where we are working. Just to give you a glimpse of how Polyloop came about. The first research was done in this field by our founders in 2018. The initial experiments were run in 2019, and we got some breakthrough results around the end of 2019. And based on that, we did the business research, and we did the patenting. Our IP is under protection now, and fundraising. So first, Techstars came in with a small seed capital that really enabled us to do the patenting and to do a serious round of fundraising. Then Vespucci Partner Capital came on board as our seed investor, and this is where we are right now. We are basically in the acceleration phase of our program. we're right now working on some pilot projects that we are doing with some big industry players, both plastic producers and both some other players who are producing a lot of plastic waste and want to deal with this problem. Of course, it's very important here that all the stakeholders need to be willing to deal with this problem and not just leave it for future generations or future decision makers to deal with it. We are right now focusing on our pilot programs that as an output will lead to actually commercially viable models for using our technology to deal with plastic waste. And we are probably going to do a Series A investment round sometimes in 2023. And from there on, it's to the moon. Our technology is solid. We are right now focusing on actually making that technology work for our partners, making that technology work for everybody, and helping us at least put a small dent in that annual 300 million ton problem that we have globally as plastic waste. This is our team. Actually, the founders are Christina, Liz, and Gabor. If you can, at some point, catch a presentation from them, that I also recommend very much. This is our company. This is Polyloop, and I thank you for your attention. I am very glad that you listened to my presentation. I hope that you will meet Polyloop in the future. You can check us out at polyloop.com, and if you have any questions, you can email me at the email address on the screen. Thank you.